Hi. So we're here to talk to you about how to set up for success with predictive analytics. As the intro indicated, I'm Maria. I'm a data modeling architect, and I help enterprise customers work on how to figure out their specific data modeling and what to answer their specific questions. And this is Peter, analytics platform architect, one of the early Vikings, I think like what you just heard earlier. And he helped design and build the platform. So what is Keen? Well, Keen is, according to the dictionary, having or showing an ability to think clearly and to understand what is not obvious or simple about something. Well, that's kind of what we try and do. We try and provide our customers keen insights into their data. OK, but what is Keen.io? We're a data analytics platform in which you can send different kinds of events to. So they can be from smart devices like a smart watch or a smart light bulb or a pedometer. It can be a mobile app, whether it's mobile gaming or dating apps. It can be websites, things like e-commerce or newspapers, magazines, whatever's on the web. So anything that's connected to the internet can be sent to Keen. The kinds of data that you would send us would be something like pages loaded, ads viewed, links clicked, videos played, errors received. Those type of events would go into Keen. And then you'd be able to provide insights to your teams, whether it's internal teams or externally to your different customers. Really, they can go anywhere. And the kinds of data that you would be getting, the kind of insights would be more about like counts, like how many pages were loaded last week on my website, or what's the average duration of the video watched on my website, or how does someone, using a funnel, how does someone click through all the different, buttons on the application to understand what's actually going on? So that kind of insight is really useful to understanding the patterns, the behaviors that happened and are happening today. So that kind of information can then lead you to make business-driven decisions or decisions to modify your product. They can also be used in conjunction with tools like H2O in order to be able to provide a more rigorous predictive analytics. So predictive analytics, be proactive and not just reactive. You want to prevent or promote the outcomes that you want or don't want. So that's really what we're trying to do. But how do you do that? How are you going to acquire and collect the right data? What is the right data? Once you have that data, how are you going to analyze it and transform it into something that can be actually used with predictive models? So understanding that those are the information that you need to be able to get, you need to also start with something like a really good team. So you need a champion. You need to have someone there who actually understands what you're talking about, what you're trying to do, someone who can actually ensure that you're able to do it, someone really that has the resources to provide you the tools or the budget to provide you the right people. Stakeholders, you need to understand who your stakeholders are to make sure you can voice, that they can voice to you what it is they're looking for, what decisions are they actually looking to make, so you understand what kind of data to collect. And then you need a diverse team. There's a lot of different components that come into play for the analytics. There's the collecting piece, or trying to understand the pattern today, or trying to be able to model the data for the future. And having the right people on your team is going to obviously help you be able to get to there. So performance is important. I think we can all agree on that. So what does that mean? How can you make your performance good? So know what data can be collected. There's a lot of data, but what is it that you actually have the capability to collect? Like, what tools do you have that can actually collect the data? What do you have access to? And then once you have that data, OK, you can collect this data, but how should it actually look like? What should it look like in order for you to be able to put it into a query and get the data out that the insights, really, that you actually want? And then optimize the query performance. And really, that goes kind of hand in hand with knowing what the data is, modeling the data, and then being able to query that data out again. You want to be able to make sure that your queries don't take days to be able to do something where you're trying to analyze something from yesterday, trying to create something for what's going to happen tomorrow. So examples for data modeling, something like tracking signups is very common, right? So everyone wants to know, once somebody has signed up, what are they doing in their application? What are they doing in the website? So having something like a property like user ID is going to be helpful in that case. Maybe you want to know in a sign up, like, where did they come from? Whether it's geography, the city, the town, the country that they're coming from, or maybe you just want to know who it was that actually referred them. Maybe you actually care about the acquisition costs. Like maybe you're paying Facebook $1.50 for that ad, and you want to know that anytime somebody signs up, how much did they actually cost? Or maybe you just care about the cohort. Like you want to find out, well, when are people actually signing up the most? Is it in January? Is it in June? Understanding those type of properties that you want, it will help you understand how to actually model that data. Another example, tracking page shares. That's very common too. A lot of times people are sharing some sort of link, and you want to know, well, what's going on with that link? Like, who is it that's sharing it? If they haven't even signed up, maybe you need something like a cookie ID, something that actually says, oh, okay, we'll track their cookies, so you know that even before they've ever signed up, you know what they're doing. And then after they're signed up, you can actually still use the cookie ID to track their entire progress from way before they ever signed up to use your product. Or maybe you want to know how things are getting shared. So if I shared something with 5 of my friends and they shared something with 10 of their friends, and you've created a specific property for the URL that when I originally shared it, now you can track how it's being moved across the website. Who is the actual, which people are the ones that are actually like connecting everybody else, sharing this information, and that can be really useful. Or maybe you just want to know what the topic is. Maybe you want to know, like, oh, when I write an article about music, that gets shared a lot more than when I write an article about jeans, or something like that. Another example, video played. Some of the other properties may be important, like you may want to know the geolocation of where the video is being played, or who referred you to the video, but maybe you don't really care about the acquisition costs. Like you don't necessarily care that, oh, I'm watching this video online and it costs a certain amount to acquire me, when it's really irrelevant. That really didn't happen. So don't use that kind of property. But what you may care about more is like the duration watched. Like how long did it take me to watch the video? Or what time of day was it? Or maybe you don't even care about the duration. Maybe you just want to know, like, did I finish the video? Did I get halfway through the video? So understanding what you're actually trying to understand on the back end is going to help you understand what properties you want to put into your actual events. Knowing your tools. So there's a lot of different tools that can be used to do all this back-end collection stuff. Keen is really good at modeling event data over time, but maybe you actually want to use relational databases for capturing the present state of the entities. So those are both really good tools, but you don't necessarily want to use them for everything. You want to actually figure out which tools are good for what purposes. Or maybe if you want to actually be able to combine them, join them, crunch the numbers together, maybe you want to use the Hadoop ecosystem for actually that backend after you have the Keen data and you want to combine the relational database data. There's also a lot of challenges in collecting data. So deciding what tools there are hundreds and hundreds of tools, and they're all going to be great at this thing or that thing. Or trying to understand even what something is really good for is really difficult to like navigate through all the tools. Combining data from various data sources. So maybe you have access to the stuff that's in your product, but maybe you actually want to combine data from some other product as well, and be able to understand how to do that can be challenging. But you want them all to maybe fit into the same event collection so that you can actually do an analysis on all of that. Maintaining data integrity and minimizing duplication. Well, that's definitely important, especially with like mobile devices where you can lose connectivity whenever you walk into an elevator. Understanding, are you sending out those events again? Are you understanding that something was duplicated? Do you understand how to unduplicate that event? That can be challenging, but also something that's useful, important. Sending data as soon as it's available. Again, that really goes towards maintaining the data integrity. Knowing that if you can send the data now, maybe you'll get the right timestamps, maybe you're going to decrease the chances of a drop signal and duplication. Understanding data privacy and who's allowed to access it. So you can send things like a social security event or a social security number with an event collection, but that's probably not really good for privacy. You probably shouldn't do that. Understanding what you should or shouldn't put into an event collection is important. And then also, you may have a lot of different customers, and you may want to segment out that stuff. Understanding how to do that on the front end, knowing that these kinds of events are going to be seen by this customer, or these type of events can be seen by this customer, kind of segmenting all that out. Enriching data if needed or possible. I mean, if you have something like an IP address, that's great. But that doesn't really tell you anything unless you can then do something with that data and knowing, oh, it's an IP address. I can geolocate from that IP address. I can know what country, what city that person was. Scaling to accommodate business or product growth. So as your business grows, as your product grows, maybe you want to add additional event collections. Maybe you have additional properties. Maybe you actually have access to data that you didn't have before. Understanding how that's going to change is important when you're setting up your modeling to start with. And in conjunction with that, you've probably collected a lot of data already, maybe, in different formats, and being able to integrate that older data with your previously collected data can be difficult, but something that if you can go through all of these challenges, now you have all that event data. Now what, Peter?
Thanks, Maria. I'm Peter again. So we just went through the challenges and concerns you should have when you're modeling your data and thinking about collecting it. You still can't jump straight to prediction. There's a fair bit that you have to go through, and it's very important to actually understand what's happening, what history looks like. What are users doing? What are they not doing enough of? How many people are logging in? How many people are using a new feature? What does conversion look like? What does performance look like? All of these are kind of the fundamental business questions that you're going to be kind of asking yourself and asking your team. And as you identify them, you can kind of take them more broadly and spread that gospel of analytics further. Put them into dashboards. Use a tool like ours or many others to kind of be able to communicate that more broadly and share that foundational understanding. And once you're there, you can actually agree on your business problems. And I promise that something is wrong. Something is not as good as it could be. Put your egos aside and figure out what all of the teams care about together. High-level stuff like revenue and churn. What do individual teams care about around signups or performance? Agree on a shared vocabulary and metrics that you can really use to save time and facilitate these discussions. But as part of it, you need to make sure you're avoiding vanity metrics like total users. Total users is always going to go up. It's not something that you can really drive to. You instead want to build metrics that have intervals, have some conception of time. So a weekly account value churn is something that we care a lot about. It's sort of the dollar value lost per week. And that's the sort of metric that you can actually use to test hypotheses and do science. If you can't impact those metrics, maybe they're not the right metrics. But until you, as an organization, are sharing the same vocabulary and tracking what's going on and changing what's going on, you're not really ready for predictive analytics. But once you do know the history of your product, you can begin to influence the future. So based on what you're observing, how are those predictions going to change the situation? So in general, you've learned today that predictive analytics can be used to identify trends, understand customers, improve business processes, or make strategic decisions. All of that's really, really vague. So I like to think about the best way to make it less generic is, whose job are you going to make easier? What metric are you going to focus on? So in the case of churn prevention, you're ultimately just trying to keep people happy, keep them paying. For us, the leading indicators there are event volume, query usage, query performance, feature adoption, team growth. All of these can be used to understand churn. And so you wrap your head around that domain, but then you need to really define success. You need to know that the predictive analytics you're undertaking are successful. And so the answer to that is, of course, more metrics, more event data analytics. The predictions that you make, the actions you take based on those predictions will generate a whole lot more data that you're going to be feeding back in. And you can then understand, does predicting unhappy customers actually help customer success prevent churn? By how much? Or with a more product-focused view, does adding an item recommendation system actually increase average shopping cart value? And again, that's a weekly metric that you're looking at that you can actually drive to change. So once you've got your domain and your success defined, you actually have to worry about the input, and this is a lot of the same collection challenges that Maria went around. But as that scales, you're going to have to worry about reducing volume, potentially through aggregates or sampling, doing additional enrichment to pull in more user data, more product data, more cohort data. Ideally, you never want more information than what you already had collected, but as we learn all the time, you always want to bring in more. You use all that to construct your training set, and then you can actually feed the beast, which raises a whole other set of concerns. You've identified a problem, you've tracked a host of data, you've created a pipeline to feed your algorithm, you want to get it out there. The diverse team that Maria talks about, you absolutely need to have folks who can handle the infrastructure concerns of actually maintaining analytics, especially these predictive algorithms. So H2O is definitely a great tool for that, but the concerns you're going to have are around, is it an internal analysis use case? Is it an external predictive feature? The training may happen online, it may happen offline. The latency concerns there are important about where the data comes from, how it gets fed in. If it breaks in the middle of the night, who's going to get mad and who's responsible for that? No matter what, as you scale, maintenance is going to be a pain. That input data is going to change. The state of the world is going to change. Your goals are going to change. So no matter what, you're going to have to just iterate over and over again. As long as you're tracking success, that'll be very easy. You'll know that the changes you're making are important. You'll be able to use those component metrics to understand which teams are responsible for which pieces that you need to improve. Maybe you need to enhance the input. Maybe you need to tweak your algorithm or change your selection criteria, changing the definitions of what's actually important. You may have to challenge fundamental assumptions, like does the business actually work the way you think it did? If you're not seeing the change you expected, you may need to go back to first principles. But sooner or later, you will make a powerful impact. And kind of the last bit that I want to talk about here is once you've gone through all this work to do predictive analytics and you get it out there, you may rush ahead very excited, but I really wanted to encourage people to think about the sort of product and brand implications of predictive analytics. There is a lot of coverage increasingly around data privacy and data security and a lot more literacy with the public around these issues. So how explicit should you be about predictive analytics and their use with consumers? As practitioners, I think we often will rush forward and say, oh, this is cool, this is fancy and really exciting. But to some consumers, it might be more scary. So just something to keep in mind. So today we talked a little bit about how predictive analytics cannot exist in a vacuum. Hopefully we conveyed some of the challenges that you'll run into and ways to think about those problems. But again, I'm Peter and this is Maria, and thanks for listening.
Any questions? Nope.
Thank you, Maria. Peter.
Thank you.